have for you today is a really cool older Schwinn. This is a late 1960s Schwinn something or other. I don't really see a name on it. It just says Schwinn, so it's a Schwinn. A customer found this at the dump, actually. It was on a pile of other bikes that were going to be recycled, and he thought it looked a little too cool to get chucked out and recycled, so he saved it. And I'm glad he did, because it's got a couple of cool, unique features on it that I haven't seen on a Schwinn before. And I'm by no means a Schwinn historian. I just think the older ones look cool. So some of the cool features on this one are the way that the shifter is routed, actually. It comes into here, it's missing, the shifting cable is missing, and I think that's part of the reason why this thing got chucked. But the cable should come from there to here, to this pulley, and then from the pulley it goes straight down to the axle, which is kind of unique. I haven't seen one like that. Usually they go down the down tube, and then there's some business down here that then shoots it over to there. So that's kind of unique. The other thing, this one does not have a coaster brake on it. It is caliper brake only, which most of these that I see with the 3-speed, they almost always have a coaster brake on them. I don't think this is probably the first one I've seen that is actually got a caliper brake only on it. The other cool thing, this fender is actually wide open on this side. There's only struts on the non-drive side. And I think that's factory, but somebody might have deleted this a long time ago just to try and get it easier to get the wheel off. But I'm not 100% sure. Either way, that's kind of cool because it is still pretty rigid on there. This thing, of course, weighs 42 pounds. And it's got some other cool features on it. One of the really cool features that I like about these older Schwinns is actually the stem and the way that the stem kind of comes out and then thins out. It's not for weight savings because it is, of course, cast iron, but it is pretty cool looking. Same thing with the way that they make the forks. The way they make these forks is just kind of unique. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I'm assuming, what I'd love to do actually is find one of these with these forks on it and then just take all the paint off and see how they made it. I just love the way these old Schwinn frames are smooth. They're just smoothed out, and that looks really kind of cool. This one has horrendous paint on it. It looks completely terrible, but that's what they call patina. That makes it more collectible. I can sprinkle some barn dust on here, and then maybe this will become even more valuable. But we're gonna clean all that shit off because I wanna see what's underneath of all of it. We're gonna have to be very, very careful because the paint on this is incredibly thin. I mean, like whisper thin. And of course, nothing is really working. It's gonna need new cables. I'm gonna have to order some white cable housings for this, I think. Black wouldn't look right. So we're gonna have to get that on order, along with the linkage parts. But first, let's tear into this and see exactly how broken this really is. Because I'm assuming that rear end's just missing the linkage. I quoted it out that way, but I haven't actually taken it apart yet. So it could be that we have planetary gears that are bald in there and missing all their teeth. I don't know, we'll see. It doesn't crunch though, it does ride just fine, so it's probably just a little bit of love and some linkage is all it really needs. But anyway, we're gonna tear into it and let's see how it goes. After much wrestling, I got it up on the stand. My stand is not enjoying this at all. This thing is remarkably heavy. But it's time to start tearing her down. First things first, these horrendous brake cables gotta go. And we'll start getting some stuff off of this. So I'm gonna get my clipper, yoink. Get rid of that. This is like almost coming out as it is. Oh, that's nice and bent. Okay, so that's fun. That's kind of interesting. I think this was loose, and to fix it, I think we're gonna have to get rid of that fender here. That fender is gonna be making a lot of noise, and they're basically made out of chrome-plated tissue paper, so we're just gonna go ahead and get rid of that. Now, fortunately, I can get these brake calipers. I can get these brake levers off without taking these handlebars or these handle grips off, which is fantastic because I do not want to lose these handle grips on this project. They are very, very cool. There we go. Ouch. Taking these brake calipers off because they are absolutely filthy. And in order to make them work correctly, I'm going to have to lube them up and get them all looser, and like this one sticks. That's not too bad actually, but it moves really slow. So let's get that wheel off. That's going to be step one of getting this linkage put back together. There we go. Well, that comes out rather nicely. All right. It's not in too bad a shape. Feels like it's got good bearings in it, but that axle is, you can already see we've got a bent axle. So, whoa. Well, maybe we got a bent axle. It could just be a nuts off, a little funny. All right, let's get this around. You can't stab yourself in the finger with a screwdriver unless you do it right. Look at that first shot. Come on, get up there. You can do it. Trick with these is to get one side up and then walk it around. There you go. And make sure it goes flying across the room. Otherwise you won't be able to hear it hit the ground. Well, I got a little bit of farm field in there. All in all, not looking too bad yet. So one of the most bestest tools in the world are these Knipex parallel jaw pliers. It's kind of like having a crescent wrench, only it doesn't round everything off. All right, now is where we get a little tricky. It's not quite the right size. What do I need? So the most valuable tool is that. I see what happened. That's a good sign. We've got keyways coming out. Thrust bearing. More keyways. All right. So that's what the insides of this thing look like. All right, so it's been a few weeks. I've had some time to do a little bit of research on this hub and figure out exactly what's going on with it. It looked very different on the inside when I first pulled this thing apart. Some of the basic components are there, like the planetary gears and the lockups on the end, but the ratcheting mechanism was very different on this one than it is on a typical AW hub. It turns out this is actually an SW hub, which is a rare Sturmey Archer hub that they apparently made for about 2 or 3 years. I was way off on the year I thought this was built. I thought this bike was built in the late 60s. Turns out this one was built in 1957. It's a lot older than I thought. It's a decade older than I thought it was. They made this SW hub from 1957 until 60, 61. I'm not 100% sure. If you're a Sturmey Archer history aficionado, by all means put it down in the comments and let me know if you know anything else about these hubs, because I'm kind of fumbling through this based on the little information I could find online. The big difference between this SW hub and an AW hub, which would be typical for an older Sturmey Archer, is the ratcheting mechanism. So when I took this apart, there was a keyway, or what I thought was a keyway, that was on top of the assembly when I took it all apart. I even kind of commented on it and then threw it in the magnetic tray. Thank God I put it in the magnetic tray, because that keyway is extremely important. So what those keyways are they're actually the ratcheting mechanism. So there's 6 of them total, 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. I found all 6 of them, put them in this bag so I would not lose them. And if you look closely, they're not actually keyways. They're actually sort of crescent moon shaped. there's an arch on the bottom, and that arch is extremely important because what that arch does, the the large radius sits in here, and the arch just sort of rocks back and forth on these teeth. So if it's going this way, it's just ratcheting back and forth. But then when you pedal and you go this way, it locks into that tooth, and that's what locks up the hub so that the power is transmitted to the hub. It's a very, very unique system in that there's no springs. These are not sprung at all. They're just free floating in there. And for that reason, I think this was not a very robust system, and Sturmey Archer discontinued it after only 3 years. But unfortunately for us, what that means is it's probably the reason this bike was thrown out. The shift linkage for this is about as rare as these pawls are, which is to say they don't really exist. So I kind of had to make one out of an AW linkage. And what I did is I took a very, very small nut. So this linkage is threaded on the end with a 348 thread, male thread. So I took a 348 nut and I ground enough of the corners off so that it would fit up inside the hollow axle before I lose the gears. So it would fit up inside the hollow axle. And then what I did is I shoved a Q-tip all the way up to the top to hold it against the bottom, and I threaded this into it. So that's what is holding this on right now, which will allow me to put everything together on this. Where's the, right there. So if I put all of this together, it will actually. So unfortunately, it did come unscrewed from its place. But since it is, I can show you a little bit easier of exactly what we've got to do here. So this collar is the part that moves up and down. And there's a pin that goes in that slot to hold it, and that's what we threaded into to move it up and down. That moves the whole gear change mechanism up and down, moves this up and down. So that pin is right here. And unfortunately, when we went through it to thread to the other side, while this was on there, so this came up through the middle, went through, and then we put a nut on this back side. But unfortunately, there's just not much room for the nut at all. I mean, there's like a single thread all the way around is all that's holding it. So it works to hold it for a little bit, but it doesn't really take much for that nut to fall off. So unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be a viable way to fix this. I think instead what I'm going to have to do is make a new one of these pins that goes through here. And then I've got a 348 tap that I got from McMaster. And then that is what I will tap this with after I make a new one, so that we can just thread this in there, and then I can get a whole bunch of thread in there. So that's how I'm going to try and get this fixed. I'm going to have to run to the hardware store and try and find a chunk of steel rod. Like, I mean, I might even be able to use like a nail and just harden it, like case harden it. I don't know, but I'm going to have to try and get it fixed that way, because that's the only way I could think of to make it so that I can attach a linkage to this thing. So that's the next step. Well, it took a bit more doing than I thought it would, but I was able to recreate this piece with the 348 threading in the middle. So that looks something like that. They're not identical. This one is close enough that it will function correctly, and it should allow us to connect our linkage so this thing will actually shift, which is kind of my whole thing with this. The way I did this was I found a nail, a pretty decent sized nail, and I cut a flat on the top and then drilled a hole so that I could tap it with a 348. Cut the outsides, and I started making it shorter and shorter and shorter until it matched the correct dimensions. And then I put the little shoulders on it with a Dremel and a mill. Well, at first I did it with a mill, and then I kind of fine fit them about 5 minutes ago with a Dremel, just to make sure everything was good, because it actually does, the whole assembly does have to spin on this piece that it pulls up and down, so there can't be anything outside of it that's snagging it. So you can see we've got a very, very short shoulder to pull up and down. There's not a lot of space on there, so it has to be rather precise. This thing was a pain in the butt to make. as can be demonstrated by this failure one, which is a nail with half of a broken tap stuck in it. When you're tapping a 348 thread, it's a very, very small tap that will break very, very easily. So you have to go slow and be patient, and you just get like about 30 degrees every time you go around. Just go about 30 degrees and then pop that chip out, 30 degrees and pop that chip out, oil it, and just go slow and easy, and you can usually get it done. So now the time has come for reassembly. So I'm going to reassemble all of this stuff, and we'll get it back in the bike, and hopefully everything works as intended. I am a little bit nervous though, because I found a cutaway of this, and there is another piece that is supposed to, like the linkage that I'm putting in this is completely wrong, but it's all we've really got to work with. But I am a little concerned that this little piece that I made isn't going to be robust enough to pull the guts of this thing up and down to move through shifts for very long before it snaps. So it's still going to be a rather fragile mechanism, but it should be able to make the bike work at least. We'll just see how long. I don't know, it could last another 20 years, I don't know. So let's get this all put back together and we'll kind of go from there. So to start with, I need to get this in here, because I want to put that linkage on before I put anything else on. Even though you should be able to put it on with this whole thing assembled, I am not taking any chances with this. There we go. Alright, so that is threaded in there. So now we put our carrier on, make sure it's the right direction. I am going to put some grease on this. Generally speaking, you don't do a lot of greasing on Sturmeys, but I do want to make sure some of this is greased. All right, next comes probably the most stressful part of this whole thing, and it's going to be putting those keyways on, because they like to fall off, and I am terrified I'm going to lose one, because I have no way to remake those. So this part goes on, and then this part goes up over top of it once we get the keyways in. But I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to kind of glue them in a bit with grease, because I can't come up with any other good way to go about making them stay in place while I put everything together. Not a lot of grease, because I want the oil to sort of dissolve it later. I'm hoping it will, because there's not really supposed to be grease in there. I think it might make them not move quick enough or easy enough for this thing to function correctly, but I'm really not sure. So then that's going to go in last once it's actually in the hub. So I'm going to put one on here like so. Put all three of these in. And putting the other ones in is going to be even worse. So they need to be somewhat centered. And this goes down over it. Bottom again. Well, they seem to work. Turn, 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 and lock, turn, 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 and then lock. So they seem to be doing their job. That's good. That is excellent, actually. All right. So I think we can put it back in the hub now, and then I can put this part on there, put those bearings, well, actually, other way around. I can put those bearings in, and we put this part in, and then we can try and see if all of this is actually functioning correctly. All right, moment of truth. Let's get this put in here. Put that retaining ring back on. All of that to fit down in there. And it's all sitting in there correctly. This should screw right on. And make sure that retaining washer. It's got to be the most nerve-wracking one I've ever had to assemble, because those pawls are just those little keyways. There we go. Alright, so that should have everything in place. Now I've got to put all of those bearings around the outer edge so that I can put this part in and then put the lock nut down, or the bearing nut down. It should lock all of that in place. Then we can flip it over, and I've got to put bearings in that side also, I believe, but we're not going to flip it just yet. All right, so let's put all those bearings in here. We'll get that done. And I'll be back in a second. Back together, but unfortunately it is not really working. So when I turn it this way, that should be lock up, and it's not locking with anything. And when I pull it up, I do, however, get gear engagement, so it's going in one of its speeds. If I pull it up there, and then if I pull it up further, it goes into another gear. So there's high. There's another one down there. Oh, I had it a second. Somewhere in here. So I've got like one speed right now. That's all I've got. So time to take it apart again, see what's going on. So I took it apart yet again because it is really bothering me that I can't get that other gear to work. So I want to show you real quick what I'm talking about with the engagement poles. If you look right here, you can see these. Those are what I'm talking about. Those are made to just sort of swing out and then catch the edges of, where's that other part? Of this part in there. But for whatever reason, they aren't catching. So that's why I cannot lose those, because if I don't have those, they won't move. I can't make another one to move around in there. It's really hard to make that shape. So I really can't lose those. That's why I'm being very delicate with these. But what I've kind of learned is I think I'm actually wrong. The ones on the bottom do seem to be engaging. If I turn this, you can see it does turn the shaft. And if I hold the shaft, it does lock against the outer hub. And this is the top one is actually out right now. So the bottom one is the one that's engaging, or the non-drive side one is the one that's engaging. It's the drive side one that isn't. So that must be the one that causes lockup for the higher gears. Now I need to figure out why it's not locking up for the underdrive. It should be the standard gear. So I'm going to keep working with this and see if I can get it figured out. Because I think I'm not 100% sure I was right that those poles just aren't able to swing out. Because when I opened this up, after putting WD-40 in it and gun oil, everything was moving really nice and lubricated, like it was really moving loosely. So I don't think that's the problem. I think there's something else going on. If I missed a part, I've looked at that diagram probably 1,000 times, and I'm not missing anything in here. So there's something else going on that I'm not seeing. I just need to mess with this long enough that I get it figured out. I have this all tore apart again because I wanted to get a look at where the 3 gears were in this so I could get it kind of figured out. And I think I was wrong on a couple of my assumptions. I thought the default was the underdrive. It's not. It's overdrive. When I say default, I mean the gear with the lowest amount of tension. So this is what low gear looks like. You've got the most cable tension on it, so the carrier is as high as possible. I'm going to try and hold this and kind of spin it so you can see what's going on. So power is transferred through this. This is where your sprocket goes on. So if you look at where the pawl indentations are, you'll notice that as I spin this, we're getting a reduction so that we're putting more spin here than we're getting here. Notice how I'll try and line them up. So you notice they're lined up, and there's 3 on each, so this should be correct. So if these are lined up, they should stay lined up if this is 1-to-1, but it isn't. So if we spin, you can see that they come unsynced. So this is our low gear. And in order for low range to engage, this pawl ring has to separate from our outer planetary ring gear. So that's what it looks like in that speed.
Now if we drop this back down and we spin it, you'll notice that again, they're getting out of sync. That's because this is high gear when we're down here. When we're all the way down, we're in high gear. So if I put this in the middle, this is hard to do without having it assembled, but there's a middle spot where I can put this in where it won't lock with either one, and it'll lock in so that it's a one-to-one drive. But it's nearly impossible for me to show you that without having all the springs in. But I could show you how the upper and lower gears work without having it all assembled. It's a very unique way this hub works. And I'm not sure, I put this apart, I've taken this apart and I put it back together about 10,000 times, and it still just doesn't seem to be working right, and I'm not sure what I'm missing here. A lot of the assumptions I had before were not true, so I'm trying to go through, figure out what I'm missing. It feels like I've got like one order of operations wrong, and I've read through a couple of tutorials online as to how to assemble this, but it feels like I've got an order of operations wrong where I've got a spring on the wrong side or something that's not separating correctly. But I've run through this in my head about 1,000 times as to how the power is transferred, and it all seems to make sense. I just don't know why it doesn't happen when I put it in the hub. So I'm going to keep working on this and see what I can figure out. So I have the bottom of the assembly in, and I do have confirmation. I can spin this around one direction, and then if I go the other way, it locks. So I have confirmation that the pawls on this side, on the non-drive side, are engaging and they are correct. So that I know for sure. Now it's a matter of why isn't the power transferring correctly on the top of this? That's what I'm trying to figure out, and it feels like this is not reaching something that it's supposed to be reaching. I no longer think it's the pawl's not engaging. I think there's something else going on here that I'm missing. Okay, now with the rest of this in there, I can get this power to go down and engage, and that is giving me a one-to-one right there. But after it's assembled, it sits more like this and doesn't really, it's like right on the edge, and it doesn't actually contact anything. So I think it might be something to do with how that's sitting, or maybe how, I don't know, I think it might be a depth issue. I've lost count of how many times I've had to do surgery to take these damn things out. Assembling one of these is like playing a game of Operation. I'm trying to do it without the grease this time, just to make sure that's not a factor. And it is biting me in the butt something fierce right now. So I have to get these on there, get this whole thing settled. Let's put the washer on first. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be able to tell you I got it figured out. So right now this has no tension on it, and I did this at first, but I came up here to test it like, oh no, it doesn't work. No, it's upside down. So we have our high gear. If I put a little more tension, we have direct drive, and if I put a lot of tension, we have underdrive. So this hub is now working 100%, which makes me feel very, very good, because I was getting very confused there as to what it was I was doing, because I put it together 100 times, and it looked correct every single time I did it. I went back and forth on that breakaway, or on the cutaway rather, and I just looked at it over and over and over again, and I was pulling my hair out. And you'll never guess what it was that I was doing wrong. What I was doing was, when I was tightening everything up, I was trying to center the axle in here. That's wrong. What you have to do is take as much out this way as you can until it butts up against that wall, and then tighten up the non-drive side for the bearing nuts. Once I did that, everything engaged correctly the way it was supposed to. I think that's been the problem all along. I think I just had it too far this way so that that drive piece couldn't fit all the way down in and engage correctly. So yeah, my initial thought on it being the pawls was wrong. It was absolutely wrong. And And I'm glad it drove me nuts enough to take this thing apart and take another look at it. I couldn't even sleep last night. I was just kind of like going crazy trying to figure out what am I doing wrong on this thing? Because usually these Sturmey Archer hubs are pretty simple. You take them apart, you put them back together the opposite of the way they came apart, and they work. The AW hub is really simple to do. And actually, after doing this one a couple thousand times, the SW hub is really simple to do too. It's just a little bit different and a little bit out of the norm. So yeah, I would totally do another one of these again. Now that I've done it 1,000 times, I think I could probably do an SW hub with my eyes closed probably. So very happy to report we will have all gears. I'm gonna go do a test ride of this thing again just to make sure everything is correct, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be because it's working on the stand. Well, let's knock on wood for that. But I think we got this one figured out 100%, and now it's going to go down the road with all 3 gears. So I'm very happy. I just inflated the back tire before I solidify everything in the back because I don't want to get that all in place and have to tear it all off again. So the back tire is inflated. We'll see if it holds air. If it does, I'm going to try and ride this thing today and we'll see what happens. Now that we got the brakes, now we got the brakes all back on it, I can take it off the stand here, which it doesn't like being on anyway, put the front wheel on, and then take this thing for a ride. I'm really hoping this is the end of it, because this bike has fought me more than any other bike I think I've had in here recently. I've had worse, but this one's definitely up there. It's been a giant pain in my butt. Well, I just got back from the first test ride on this, and the good news is everything seems to be functioning perfectly. We have gears. Lots and lots of gears. Went through it a couple of times and I had 3 gears every single time. There are a couple of dead spots, which I'm sure is because it's a friction shifter and you're going to hit those dead spots when you're going along. But that's going to be something that we're going to have to get used to when it's shifted, because I don't think the shifter that I've got for this was actually meant for this hub. I actually, looking at this a little bit more when I was assembling it, I think this bike might have actually been born a 1-speed bike, and I think this might have been retrofitted in after the fact. If you actually look at how this is mounted on here, this is a clamp-on cable holder that's run to a pulley that appears to just be screwed onto a bolt on the side of the cable housing here. I don't know if this was ever meant to be like this, because like I said, when I started on this one, usually these run down the down tube and then across the chainstay. This one's running this way. I think this one might be something of like an aftermarket upgrade or something. I don't know, but I don't think this is necessarily correct, and I don't think the shifter that I have for this is necessarily correct. So I don't know that those steps in there would even fall where gears are in the rear end on this thing. So I think friction shifter is probably the only real way I can make this thing work. And it does seem to work perfectly fine as long as you index over to wherever the gears are. It does seem to work just fine. Brakes work just fine. The only thing that I really found that still needs quite a bit of attention is this front hub. I didn't check it, but the front hub is way out of true. It's It's like a banana in there. So I'll have to get that re-trued up, which I'll do here in like 2 minutes. And then after that, I think this one just needs a couple more little tweaks here and there, a little tightening of this and a tightening of that. And I think it'll probably be ready to go. There are some parts on this that are obviously not original, and I don't know which one is the original. This brake is very rudimentary. I actually had to add that cable stop in there because it didn't have one. It's very rudimentary. The one on this side is just the normal one that usually comes on Schwinn's of the period. Well, of the 60s anyway. So I don't know if this is what they look like in the 50s and then this is the one that they added, or if they've always looked like this and then they found this off something else. But this is a very rudimentary steel. This one's steel and this one's aluminum too, by the way. This is a very rudimentary steel brake for the rear brake. But all in all, it runs and rides perfectly fine now. I mean, you could ride this pretty much anywhere. It just needs a little bit of tuning, a little bit of tweaking, which we'll get done here for the owner. And then I will let him know it's ready for pickup, and I think this one will be ready to go. I think I've officially named this one the Blue Falcon. That's what this one's called. It's been a lot of trouble and headache, a lot more than I thought it was going to. So I think it has earned the name the Blue Falcon. So I'm going to get that wheel trued up and we should be ready to go shortly. So when I was trying to true this wheel, I noticed something that was done wrong by somebody else. So if I spin this, you see it's pretty true until it gets to there, about right there, right? That's where it's starting to rub. But if we zoom out, you'll notice that this spoke, and this spoke are a lot shinier than all the other spokes. They're also thicker. These are 2 millimeter and these are, I don't know, roughly 1.5. But more importantly, they are installed wrong. So if you look here, we've got this spoke coming to the right side. This spoke is also coming to the right side. Then this one's going to the left and this one's going to the left. These are supposed to alternate. So right, left, right with the old spokes. So that's why this is probably pulling over to the one side, because these spokes were never installed correctly. My guess is they're probably not tensioned right either, so I'm gonna have to go through and check tensions on this, because with those being thicker, it's probably gonna knock a bunch of stuff out. I just noticed there's another new one right here. This wheel had like a pseudo rebuild, but at least they got that one in the right spot. So I'm gonna have to get that fixed before I start tensioning this, because that is definitely not going to work. All right, we're gonna have to take this tire off first and then try and get this sorted out. It's really easy to get in here and just go, oh, well, that person's an idiot and they didn't do that correctly. But to be honest, I've done worse. It's very easy when you're rebuilding a wheel, because it's so just like slow and monotonous to just sort of phase your brain out and then just sort of go into auto mode and you don't really think, which is what I'm guessing happened. So the real question then becomes, did they find it and just say screw it, or did they never know that it was done wrong? That's the real question to me, but because I know I've done that before. You're also supposed to alternate in here from the inside of the hub to the outside of the hub, where the spokes come from. And I've done it before where I've had two of them that were both on the inside, and I'm like, ah, damn it. And then you got to stop and take the whole damn wheel apart. And it's a royal pain in the butt. But it happens. The big thing with wheels is you just have to be slow and methodical and just get it fixed. You know. Wait a minute, does that one have to come out? Every other? No, it's just this one. This one can stay. You can stay. Crazy thing is, this being in 1957, this repair could have been done before I was born. This guy. Nope, that's the wrong one. Where's the other one? This guy goes there. You go there. And then... Okay, so we're gonna get this all locked in. Rock on, let's go. The front wheel is even straight. Blue Falcon rides again. So I'm happy to say, after all the fighting back it did, we got the Blue Falcon back on the road. It felt really good to get this 1957 Schwinn back on the road again. I had no idea it was going to be as much of a fight as it was when I started digging into this. I thought it was going to be just a rear end service, maybe put on a linkage, and that was going to be about it for how hard it was to get this back on the road. I didn't realize I was going to have to basically fix spokes and wheels and fabricate parts from scratch, but you never know what you're getting into when you take a bike on sometimes. It was a really rewarding build though. I'm really happy to see this thing back on the road, and I think the owner will be really happy to be able to ride this thing finally after saving it. So I think that's going to about do it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe stuff, and I'll have more bike videos for you really soon, because as you can see, my shop is plumb full of bikes I need to get to. So thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next one.